The Vue Composition API is really useful, but if you're used to the old Options API, then there's going to be a set of mistakes that are really easy to make because you have muscle memory from all your work in Vue 2. So if you're having issues, go ahead and run through this list to make sure that you're not making any of these basic mistakes before you go and waste a bunch of hours trying to fix something deeper. Before we go further, I do want to let you know that I am available to help your company. If you want to know more, go ahead and send me an email right now, or you can skip to the end of the video for more details. Alright, let's explore our starter code and how this works. So here we have a button which can add to our tacos and add to our burritos. We have a double order button, which doubles the order, and we have a cancel order button, which clears everything. In our code, we can see that we have num tacos and num burritos, which are reactive references. Then we have cancel order function attached to this in our homepage. And then we have the other functionality within our taco store component. That includes the buttons for adding tacos and burritos and the double order button. And I placed them like this not because this is the best way, but because this would let us see the greatest surface area of issues that we could run across. So let's go over the most common of the 5 issues. And that issue is just forgetting to make our variable reactive. So what happens when you do that? You try to change it and it doesn't work. And weirdly enough, if you then change something else, then it will sometimes update. But it's clearly not working correctly. So if you run into weird behavior like that, check to make sure that you have all of your variables reactive. The second issue crops up most frequently when you're within the same setup function and you define a variable, and then you use that variable within that same setup function within a function or computed property that you're creating, and you forget to use .value. So in the Options API, when you're in the template, you'll be setting these directly, like so. But here you'll need to use .value. And what happens if you don't use .value? Well, when you're assigning it, the thing is that nothing happens. So here, burritos has been canceled, but tacos hasn't. So if you're running into issues where the references aren't changing properly and you have assigned them with ref or reactive, then check to make sure that you're using .value. Another related way this can go wrong is not when you're assigning it. So let's say we've got the assignment right, but if you're using it anywhere in the setup function, you'll need to use .value. So this is it working properly. I know it's not doing what it says it does, but all right, so here we saw that we transferred the number of burritos to the number of tacos. But if we forget to use this value, then here's what happens. We get the object instead of the value. This can be very confusing if it's in the midst of a complex calculation. And so just be aware that if you're getting an object, then it could be because you forgot to use .value. This third issue happens a lot because setup can, in its simplest form, look a lot like the old data. And so you start to have the old muscle memory come back. And part of that old muscle memory is being able to use this dot. So for example here, we try to use this dot for model value, And when we hit double order, we get not a number. That's because we can't access this dot within the setup function. For this particular one, we have to use the props. So props.modelValue. This can also crop up when you're trying to mix the Composition API and the Options API. So if you define a function in the Options API, you can't reference it within the Composition API because that would require using this dot, which you can't use. A related issue comes when you try to destructure props. I personally love destructuring things, and so I really wanted to make this work. And I hope this is a bug that's going to get fixed in a future version of Vue 3. But as it is right now, if you try to do that, then what's going to happen? We're going to hit double order, and notice it didn't actually double tacos. It doubled the original value of tacos. We can hit this again, and it won't increase it. And we hit it again, it'll bring it back to 6. And so if we destructure this, we lose the reactivity. So make sure to just use props and don't destructure it. The final issue is if we forget to return something from our setup function. This happens most often with functions and computed properties because we didn't have to return them in the Options API, but it can happen with variables as well. And so what happens if you don't return it is just you don't have access to it. It's as if you didn't define it. So make sure to return things and then everything will work. Of course, if there are things that you're only using within the setup function, in that case, don't return them. So the 5 big issues we talked about: first, forgetting ref or reactive; second, not using .value when you're using a reactive reference in the setup function; 3, using this dot in the setup function; 4, destructuring props in setup; and 5, not returning from setup. There are, of course, a lot more issues that can crop up, especially if you get beyond an example app. And in that case, you'll want to contact me directly. I'm not the budget option, but I can bring huge value to your organization. Sometimes that means creating code directly. Sometimes that means going in and fixing a big issue that you've been having. Sometimes that means working with your developers to make them more effective. If any of those might be valuable for your organization, you can email me at the address below to set up a free 15-minute discovery call. Otherwise, I'll see you next week.